Hey, what's up guys? My name is Rachel and welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. This is the week 22 garden tour and I have finally started some of the work that I said I was going to do in the garden. I'm not entirely done because these are still here and that is the next thing on my list to come out, but there have been some big changes and actually tomorrow I am planning on starting work on even more big changes. So you might hear a little bit of construction noise in the background, and that is because fiber is being installed in my neighborhood for some reason. Yesterday they were right in front of my house, so I couldn't film. There are big piles of dirt everywhere for them burying everything. So the first big thing you might notice is that my tomatoes are finally gone. All of my tomato plants in the garden have been pulled out now, and I feel like I have so much more room in the garden to do stuff. This nasturtium definitely has room to take over now, but not for long. It will die when it eventually freezes. But more importantly, the fava beans have the room they need to start growing up. And eventually they will need the support of the trellis. You can see some of them are kind of growing at funny angles because they were trying to get themselves out from underneath those dying tomato plants, but for the most part they all look pretty healthy. There's this one that looks like it was a little stunted, but I'm sure after a few days with full sun it will start taking off again. It's only been, I think, 2 days since I took out all of these tomatoes. And if we look further down here, I still have not taken out the peppers, but the fava beans within the peppers, one there, there's one here, they don't look really stunted to me at all, although there's probably something back in there that I can't see that is not currently doing so well. And I did look it up. It is true that peppers will not ripen quite as quickly when it's cold outside. So my intuition about that was correct. So I do actually have still a lot of green peppers on these plants, and one of the biggest reasons I haven't taken them out yet is because I'm hoping that they will turn red. I know to a certain extent peppers will ripen indoors, but I think they have to be pretty close already before they will continue the process indoors. And at the end of the day, if I end up with all of these just being green peppers instead of red peppers for me to harvest, that's not that big of a deal. But I think red peppers are sweeter and tastier, and I would like to have some of them at least turn red. So right now, the actual lushest part of the garden is the part that is going to die very soon. The eggplant still look really, really great, and I'm still harvesting off of them. But with these antiguas, I've noticed as it's been cooler, a lot of them have not been getting to be the same size as they were before. They're definitely stunting a little bit, and that makes sense with the chilly weather for sure. But I am still harvesting quite a few very good sized of these Nagasaki long eggplants. So much so that I still have trouble going through them on my own. And both sets of plants are still making plenty of little babies and putting on fresh flowers. And so they are trying really hard to continue producing like they were in the summer. My row of Brassicas here is also doing pretty well. You can see quite a bit of growth coming on these guys, especially the ones that aren't shaded out currently by the eggplant, but they're still pretty small. It will be a little bit before they hit that growth spurt. See, here's one that's still a little small, and there's this one that is still alive but still very small. I should probably cut this branch off so that he can have a little bit more sun. But And there's ones like this. They're starting to get a little bigger. And if we come down to where the Brussels sprouts are, these are actually getting to be good-sized plants. They look a little wilty right now just because it's a little dry and hot out, actually. Well, hot for fall. It's like in the 60s. Oh, look, a little visitor bee. That's a good reason to leave flowers in your garden at any time of year. Just make sure the pollinators know they always have somewhere to eat. And now I'm right up here by the root vegetables, and you can see this one row of turnips looks really great, and everything else is still looking very sparse, so much so that you can't really see it on camera from this far away. There are definitely sprouts coming up, but there's not as many as I think I planted. So I might come back through here and reseed a little bit at this point, just to make sure that I have enough. But mostly it's the carrots I'm worried about. If I come down here, you can kind of see some of them. There's some at my feet here, these little carrot sprouts. There's one right there. But I will say a good bit of them did not sprout, even with the cardboard method, and I'm thinking I was probably just a little too cautious with that method. I probably should have left the cardboard on longer, because as soon as I started seeing sprouts, like one or two, I pulled it off, and then the rest of the seeds were so far behind they probably dried out, which is why I'm getting something like 20-30% germination from the seeds that I'm pretty sure that I put in there. However, a big success is this late summer into fall bean trellis. It has been pretty much the right amount of green beans so that I can feed myself and my friends, and it's not too overwhelming at the moment. It is a spot of beauty in the garden, and it is doing a good job of fixing nitrogen in the soil for later. And I just want to remind you guys, if you are planting things like legumes to fix nitrogen in your soil, the only way that that works is if you leave the roots after you harvest them. Because if you pull out the roots, if you pull out the plants by the roots, all of those little nodules on the roots are where they have fixed their nitrogen. And so if you're pulling the plants out by the roots, then you're just pulling up all of that hard work that the plant did to fix the nitrogen. And so if you cut off the plant at the ground level in the stem, and then just take the plant above ground out, you're going to maintain the benefits of having the nitrogen fixed down in the soil. And also you're not going to disturb all of that good soil structure that was built up by the plant and its relationship with all of the bacteria and fungus that are in the soil. This trellis has gone from looking okay to looking fairly dead. We had a couple of nights right below 40 degrees, and I think that seems to be the limit for these guys. It's not dead, the plants are not dead, but they are pretty much there. And so this is next on the list in terms of things that need to get pulled out, cleaned off, especially because its replacement is coming up. Let's see if I can find, yeah, so I have some little baby peas sprouting up. So once this is taken off the trellis, the peas will then have free reign to go ahead and grow up that trellis. So if you're super new to gardening, the idea of planting something before the thing before it has even died or moved might sound really overwhelming. And I really agree with you. I could probably be doing a lot more of stuff like that, and I'm not, because I'm still kind of trying to feel it out. I first saw Charles Dowding doing this, and I just thought to myself, like, how does he know what to put where? Like, does he have a big spreadsheet? How do I figure out what I should be planting and when, so that it takes over when this other thing dies? And that just felt like too much for me. So I started small, and I tried to think about, okay, what am I planting in the fall garden? Just all of it. And then I looked at, okay, well, which spaces would I put it in anyway, and having the trellises makes that easier because in the fall garden, the literal only thing that could use these arch trellises is peas or some sort of climbing flower, maybe. I haven't found a good option. So basically the arches can only be peas in the fall if I'm going for edibles. And so that really narrowed down my choices. I knew, okay, I have to plant peas on these trellises to take over when the beans are going to be dying off. Similarly, with the fava beans, I knew that they would need a trellis and it could not be an arch because they're pretty straight plants. And so the tomato trellis was the obvious choice there. And with everything else, it has just kind of been, okay, root vegetables have a hard time going underneath something else. And so I waited until I had an area that I could completely clear to put in the root vegetables. And similar with these large brassicas. I've tried to kind of interplant a little bit, but we're seeing that them not having quite enough sunlight if they were planted underneath something else. Like if I was to plant a row directly underneath where the eggplant are now, that would probably not make any difference between them also being stunted in their little cups right now. So another example is this row of brassicas. This was originally squash, and that came out pretty early in the summer because of vine borers and squash bugs. And so this area was clear and ready for me to start planting large brassicas in it well before I actually needed it. So when I was doing my planning for the fall, I knew that I could have a good big row of stuff here that was going to need to go in sooner and also was going to get a little bit bigger. I've also gone ahead and put in my garlic for the year. I have two varieties this year. Both of them are soft neck varieties. One of them is from the Experimental Farm Network, and I'll have to look up where the other one is from. But I planted these in between some of the existing brassicas that I have because garlic is one of those things that grows up really straight and it's going to need space well into the middle of the summer. And so if I gave it its own patch to just inhabit by itself, I wouldn't be able to plant anything else there until halfway through the summer. So what I did was I planted it along the edges of the garden and also kind of in between where some of my brassicas are planted in big long rows over here, so that they are not only sharing the space now in the fall, but they will be well positioned to be sharing space later. And that's one of those things that if you're new, I wouldn't expect you to know or think about. But this being my third year growing garlic, I am well aware of how long it takes and how I cannot just give it all of that space if I want to be able to use my space efficiently, I guess. I think it will make a lot more sense once you see the garlic start coming up. But I have big plant, big plant, big plant. And then in these little in-between areas, I've put little bunches of 3 or 4 garlic cloves, as well as doing a row of garlic all the way along this outer edge here, because garlic, again, it grows straight up, so its leaves aren't going to branch out and shade out any of these, and it will be able to shoot up in between where these big long leaves are going to probably be very close to touching, if not overlapping in some places, and it will be able to push up through that and still get a good bit of sunlight even while these things get big around it. And then later, when these come out, these will be big empty spaces in between little bunches of garlic that will be free for planting other things. So all the brassicas that I have not yet planted out are still in these cups. They are okay. I haven't tended to them at all. They've kind of been left to sit in the rain and the sunshine, and sometimes I leave them flooded for a while after the rain. And they're still doing okay. They're not doing the best. I'm just being lazy gardener. But I think once the eggplant come out, these will be able to go in the ground, and they will be a little behind, but if everything goes well, I could still get a harvest from them, and I am still going to try no matter what, because if I don't try, I definitely won't get anything, you know? Last week I don't think I updated you on the raised bed, mostly because it still looks largely the same I have planted cilantro seeds in some of these empty areas, and I haven't seen signs of them sprouting yet. And it's getting to the point where I'm a little worried that they won't sprout, but again, I've been kind of a lazy gardener, letting the rain water them. Oh, hello. That might be a sprout of cilantro. But I've been letting the rain water them and kind of relying on this light layer of mulch to keep them damp enough to sprout. And that may or may not be good enough. But everything else in this bed is doing pretty well. You can see that thyme is looking really great, getting rooted. The stevia is going to flower. And in general, everything is looking great. Oh, Kata, this is not for you. Ugh. If something sprouts and then she lays on it, maybe that's okay. Have you guys ever had potted plants that look a little squished and you're like, what on earth is happening to it? If you've got a cat, it's probably a cat. Cats love to lay in plants. So the last little update I'll do is this area over here. I have had this covered in cardboard for a couple of weeks now to kind of start killing off the grass. And some of my potted plants got moved over here because the wind was blowing everything all around. This is the only cilantro I have right now. This is one plant of it, believe it or not, that just grew from my neglect on the porch. And now that it's cooling off, is doing a lot better. But anyways, tomorrow is the day that I'm bringing in compost and mulch and putting in my berry bushes. So this is the corner of the property. So we'll have bushes along the sidewalk there and then coming up this line in between the two houses. And up here are where the berry bushes are living for the moment. I got some as just potted plants. This is a blueberry. I got another blueberry here. And then these were bare roots, and they are just starting to sprout up their new green growth. And so I want to get these in before it gets too cold. These ones are thornless blackberries. I want to get these in before it gets too cold, not because I'm worried about it freezing so much that I can't work the soil, but because I want them to have some good warm weather during the day to still feel good enough to expand their root system and kind of get acclimated and get ready for the colder weather that is coming. Alrighty guys, well that is all I have for you today. If you are new here, I put out a garden tour every Wednesday until further notice. So if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference and you don't miss these garden tours. So thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I wish you happy gardening.